Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. Session 2. So we'll talk now about prophethood and the miracle. And last week we defined the miracle. The miracle Islamically. We mentioned the conditions for the matter to be a miracle. It has to be what? Extraordinary.
It can't be matched. No, you ain't got that for yet.
So extraordinary meaning what? Out of the norm, completely out of the norm. It what? Can't be matched or outdone, as you just said, Brother Yaqeen, by an opponent. The third condition,
The way that he says,
it happens
the way he says.
the way he says it will happen. He, meaning the prophet. And we left out one, usually I mentioned it earlier. And what? Performed by whom?
Who claims to be a prophet?
Performed by one
Who claims
who
prophet?
claims to be a prophet. So an ultra righteous person might do something incredible, but he doesn't claim to be a prophet. Okay. Performed. So the miracle has to be what? Extraordinary. It's performed by, usually I prefer to put this one as second. It's performed by one who claims to be a prophet. It cannot be matched or outdone by an opponent, and it happens the way he says it will happen.
So that proves the fact that Moses was a prophet. That
For example, let's mention the case of Moses, for example. Moses, alayhi salam, he throws his staff on the ground and it becomes an actual snake. This is something that's what? Extraordinary. He claimed for himself to be what?
Prophet.
A prophet. He had opponents, the sorcerers, who were opposing him. And what Moses did, alayhi salam, could not be what? Matched or outdone. And it happened the way he said it will happen. So this shows us, this is an example of a miracle and the conditions. Very good. Very good. So we can just mention here, Moses, Musa, alayhi salam, and his staff. So this is a what? Mentions the conditions for being a miracle. Now let's mention here the miracle is not impossible. The miracle is not impossible. Not impossible means it's what? Possible.
Possible.
Yeah, double negative. Not impossible means it's what? Possible. What did we say the miracle is? Extraordinary. So the extraordinary does not equate impossible. A staff being transformed into a snake the mind says that this is what?
Possible.
Possible.
Uncustomary.
It is uncustomary. Is this the way things usually happen? Not at all.
Nope.
But you can go back and take it a step. The snake comes from what? Most snakes come from what? Eggs, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the egg itself, when it's first laid, it's not alive. Yet from that egg, you get a what?
Snake.
A living creature,
Living creature.
right? Meaning a snake. That, of course, we don't consider this impossible. We take it for what?
Right.
Take it for granted, right? Because it's something we are familiar with from whether we had snakes or from just science. We take it for granted that this is how snakes what? This is their origin. They start from an egg.
Egg.
So although if you really think about it, this is itself what? Something amazing. That the female snake, she lays these little eggs, they're not alive, and then from them what come living creatures. Okay? So who made that happen? Allah Ta'ala. And Allah Ta'ala, the one who has the power to create the living snake from the egg, has the power to what? Create a living snake from a staff. Because there's only what?
One
Creator. So the extraordinary does not equate impossible. And this is something where the materialists, this is where they completely went off the deep end. Because they only believe in what? Matter. So for them to try to explain things, they have to say, well, this is the cause of that, which is the cause of this, which is the cause of... They don't want to say, well, there's a creator who controls everything. But we know from what we said that causes don't what? Create. Causes don't create. The fire does not itself create burning. The fire burns because Allah Ta'ala what? Wills for the fire to burn. It's not the fire does not specify itself. Remember we talked about the will of Allah, the attribute of Allah specifying things to be the way they are. So the scientists, because they don't want to, meaning many of them, the materialists, they don't want to acknowledge the existence of the Creator. They try to explain the world through just what? The material world itself. So when you mention to them about the miracles, they tell you, oh, this is what? Impossible. Because they say it defies the laws of physics. This is what they say. Well, even these things they call laws, they're not laws, they're what? Customary norms. Okay, sound travels at a certain speed through air, etc. Water freezes at a certain temperature, etc., etc. All of these things that they call laws of physics, they still require what? Creator. The sound, does it specify itself with the speed which it travels through air? No. Does the water specify itself with turning into a solid at a certain temperature? Or turning into a gas at a certain temperature? So still, this phenomena requires a creator. And the one who created the customary certainly has the power to create the uncustomary. And even what is customary itself, if you thought about it, you should be what? Amazed. Right?
I've seen it rain on this side of the street, this side of the street is dry.
It is dry. No. It might not even be a cloud in the sky.
I witnessed that my own eyes.
Might not be a cloud in the sky either.
I mean, rain hard.
Yeah.
Sun shining, everything on this side of the street is dry.
There's one creator.
It's possible.
It's possible. I mean, Brother Yaqeen reported it. So it's the matters of what the materialists say. They confuse the impossible. The real impossible is really impossible. The square that's a circle, the daughter giving birth to her mother. Because these are statements that they are contradictory. But it's not impossible to the mind that a young female could give birth without having any intercourse, or now they do the, what do you call it, the in vitro, you know what they do. So without even any of that, Allah Ta'ala can will for this young female to get what? Pregnant. The norm is what? She needs to have a father, there needs to have the intimate relations, or they do the injection. But that's not a what? Necessity. It's just the what? The norm. The thing that we usually expect. But we know as Muslims, okay, we can go by what we usually expect, but we know that Allah Ta'ala is the Creator. And if something may happen contrary to the norm, Because again, it all goes back to Allah is the creator. From what they claim, the materialists, they say there are these laws, quote unquote, laws of physics, and when these conditions exist, we must get this result. And we say no. When these conditions exist, from experience and observation, we expect these results. But they don't have to be. They don't have to be. Because what's the rule? Whatever Allah has willed to be, shall be. Not what these conditions are, don't make the things the result by necessity. It's the norm that when these conditions exist, these results come. So the miracles are not what? Impossible. And their whole idea of laws of physics and all this stuff, still all of the properties of matter, they still require a creator. Still require.
For the fire to burn, there has to be a creator.
And the example here, as you mentioned that, with Prophet Abraham.
So, yeah, man, alhamdulillah.
And
it didn't burn.
And
it was a fire.
What does a Muslim say? Usually, when you have a large fire, if a human being were cast into that large fire, he's going to burn in his body and his clothes. That's the norm. We expect that. In general, we expect that because that's the what?
It's a norm for
fire
burn.
No. But we know Allah is the creator. And if Allah wills that someone would be cast into a fire and his body and his clothing don't burn, we say that it's possible and it's uncustomary and extraordinary, but it's not something we would deny.
Impossible. It's not impossible.
The materialists, they'll say this can't be. This can't be.
Because they said it's fire for to burn.
Yeah, because they say the fire has this temperature.
That's the condition.
And this is the norm. If they just stuck with under normal circumstances, this is what we expect. But we know that Allah Ta'ala is the creator. So, in case we mentioned with Prophet Abraham and Prophet Moses.
You can't say it can't be.
No, why? Is it possible by itself? Is it possible to the mind? Yes. Now, is it actual or not? This is separate. But now we know this is actual because it came to us through the revelation from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Brother Tariq, let me know how much time we have, please, inshallah. Okay, so let's continue, inshallah. So now we'll talk about the belief in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Remember we said what? The sources of knowledge, and we mentioned reliable report, right?
Yep.
So now we're going to string it all together. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Going back. So remember, first step, we talked about what? The rational judgments. And we said what? The rational possibility includes what? Customary and uncustomary. The miracles fall under the category of what? Uncustomary. They're not impossibilities. They are what? Possible. But they are uncustomary. So we established that miracles have the potential to exist. Yeah, just logically. Now we're just talking about logically. So not like the materialists, they'll say they can't exist. They're foolish, really foolish people. How does this material world why does it have the properties that it has? Is it not conceivable things could be different than the way they are? Yeah. It's possible to the mind, couldn't water freeze at 55 degrees?
Yeah.
Why does it freeze at 32 and not 55? Whatever they say, it is possible it could be different from the way it is. So why is it this way as opposed to a multitude of other potential ways? It has to be what? Specified. And it did not specify itself, so there has to be a creator who what?
Specified to be this way.
Yeah, very clear. So now we talked about what we clarified the rational possibility, and that includes what? The miracles. And that includes the miracles. And we what? Define the miracles, correct?
Yep.
The miracle defined. And then we say, continuing with the flow chart. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam performed miracles. Okay, so the miracle is what? It's a rational possibility, or rational possibilities include what? Miracles. And the miracle, we defined it, okay? What? Extraordinary, the other conditions we mentioned. And then we said that Prophet Muhammad performed miracles, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And how do we know that he performed miracles?
Yeah, witness.
Some were transmitted, meaning they had to have been witnessed, and transmitted by
Mass.
tawatur, meaning they are mutawatir. Mutawatir or mutawatir, okay? So, we mentioned rational possibility, that includes what? Miracles. Miracle is
Defined.
extraordinary, define extraordinary matter performed by one who claims to be a prophet. It happens the way he says it will happen, and it cannot be mastered or outdone by
Opponent.
an opponent. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed miracles. How do you know he performed miracles? Because some of them were mass witnessed and mass transmitted, meaning they were transmitted by tawatur. So therefore, let's put therefore. Therefore, we believe in all that he conveyed from Allah. You see, step by step. Why do we believe what we believe? Well, it's not just like they say, blind faith. Step by step. We clarify, we don't confuse the rational possibility with the impossible. The materialists, they got this point, they can't even get this point right. Because they think that something is impossible because they're not familiar with it. Huh?
And Allah is the creator.
Allah is the creator. In their mind, maybe they think the only things that can exist are what their senses are familiar with. Silly, stupid way to think about things. And even they themselves, they've never seen somebody else's mind. And they believe in what? The technology, and they believe in waves and things like this, that they can't see broadcasting waves, right? Even though they've never actually seen these things. They see the indications of them, but they don't actually see the what?
Wait.
They don't see them. We don't see them. We can pick them up on our what? Phone, or if you have a radio, but you don't actually what?
See them.
You don't see them. You see the signs of you see they're here because we see it on the device. So the rational possibility includes what? Customary and
Uncustomary.
miracles are among the what? Uncustomary. The miracle, we defined it. We said the Prophet Muhammad performed miracles. How do we know that? Because some were what? Transmitted by tawatur. Therefore, we believe in all that he conveyed from Allah. Whether it's about what? The genesis of creation. No. So what happened in the past? Previous prophetic nations. Like how do we know? We talked earlier about what? Prophet Abraham being cast into a fire. And he survived. How do we know that? Not because the Bible says it, but because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's how we know. Not because of what the Bible says, because sometimes the kuffar will say, well, the Islam, it took its stories from the Christians or the Jews. Well, these events actually happened. So that's why, and the people that he was sent to, they were familiar with them, but he clarified them because those stories also got what? Changed. So he clarified. He didn't take them like they claimed. The genesis of creation, the prophet told us about the prophetic nations, the futuristic events. Of this world and the hereafter.
The day of judgment goes in with them.
Now, there you go. The hereafter, or let's say, and the afterlife. Let me use that word. And the afterlife, meaning what happens? Because hereafter, it has some details in Arabic, in the Islamic talk. But afterlife, meaning in English convention, after you die. So the events of the futuristic events, we don't know by our senses. We don't know the future just by our senses. We can say, well, I hope it's like that. The weatherman says it looks like that because they're observing weather, maybe now in Arkansas, for example. But they don't know for sure. They're looking at signs, and then they're interpreting the signs. So the future for ourselves, we don't know if we will make it till tomorrow. Could be a giant, massive natural disaster in this region. We don't know. Could be a war. We don't know. So Allah Ta'ala gave the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam some knowledge, not all, some knowledge of some of the events that will happen in the future. So that is the one aspect of his prophethood is prophecy, foretelling of the future by the will of Allah. Inshallah, we'll talk about this next week. We'll talk about some of the miracles of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But the Prophet told us about these futuristic events, like what? The signs of the coming of the day of judgment. We cannot just know that just by using our what? Intellect. Okay? And then even more so, the events of the what? Afterlife. Because the intellect, not like what the atheists claim, the intellect says the afterlife is a what? Possibility. This is what the intellect says. But you cannot know by the intellect for sure there's an afterlife. These are the events that occur after one dies. This and part of the situation of the person after death is contingent on what he believed in this life and the deeds that he's required to. You can't know that by your intellect. But your intellect accepts that the one who what does miracles, then he should be obeyed. You follow? That goes back to what? Sources of knowledge. Where we said what? One source of knowledge, prophetic report. And also the Prophet told us, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, about the what? Sacred law. And also, of course, the correct belief. There you go. So the sacred law is not something you can know. How will you know that before you pray, you need to wash your face with pure water and not, do you follow? How would you know this by just using your intellect? You can't know. You can't know. So how would you know, for example, if you go into the bathroom, it is better to go in with your left foot first. How will you know that by your intellect? You can't what? The intellect does not know this. All the intellect says is the intellect can't comment on it. All it can say is what possible. It cannot know by it what by itself. How do you know that? How would you know by the intellect it's haram for the man to wear silk, but the woman can what? Can wear it. The woman has to wear hijab, but the man can't wear gold. How? But the woman can. How would you know this by your intellect? You can't. So the human, Allah Ta'ala, out of His mercy, He sent the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and gave us what? Informed us about what we need to do. The sacred law, because that will benefit us what? In this life and in the afterlife. And to give you an example, we mentioned in the lesson, these people who have their man-made laws, they don't even pretend that their man-made laws benefit the people after death. You hear these guys after they die and they go to their grave and they read the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. They know these laws have no bearing on the person's condition after what? Yeah. They know that. They don't pretend that they do. You follow? So Allah Ta'ala gave us laws that are for our well-being in this temporary world. And also, alhamdulillah, if we follow them, then we will be what? Protected in the afterlife. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ told us what? The correct belief. Who, not just to worship God, but who is God. Who is God, what befits God, what does not befit God, and how to obey God, how to worship Allah. So all of that, we connected two major points here, was what? The sources of knowledge. And we said one source is what? The prophetic report. And we said we know that, and the prophetic report, we know that that person is a prophet through the what? Miracles. And we mentioned about Prophet Muhammad that some of his miracles were transmitted by tawatur. Okay? Walhamdulillah wa sallallahu ala rasulillah.